Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2010's Deadly Premonition, possibly the closest video games have ever gotten to their own version of The Room, a game that's not all that well made, but in a way that somehow comes full circle and weirdly becomes art.
Following that is the attempt to modernize the Blue Blur into the 7th generation of consoles, until chaos in development turned into a lack of control. 2006's Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh boy, have we waited for this week to come. A perfect pairing of cult classic, infamous, so bad they're good video games.
Yeah, I'd say that these are 2 amazing games that should both be taught in schools for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. But I think in a weird way, their soundtracks are really notable. And that's ultimately what we're going to talk about on this show. Granted, the development stories behind them are also fun in a weird, twisted way, but surprisingly good soundtracks. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I'm doing all right. I've been continuing my trek through Symphony of the Night. Picked it back up a couple of nights ago. I have some problems with the game, but overall I'm enjoying myself. It's good. I'm having a good time.
How far has Ben gotten in The Last of Us, spoiler free?
Ben has done the changeover.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually hasn't played since then. That was like on Sunday night. He hasn't played since. I ask it every night if we're going to do it that night. We haven't gone back yet, but yeah, that's how that's gone.
I highly recommend getting back to it. I've heard many reviews say that that's a tough part to get to, but it's actually worth it. I finished The Last of Us Part 2. Naughty Dog did an amazing job. I loved it. I think it's my game of the year so far. And this is someone who liked The Last of Us, but wasn't crazy about it. Had a really, really good, thoughtful time with The Last of Us Part 2. I think the haters that are out there are those who didn't play it or just they've heard what happens. And that's not the point. You need to play it.
On my end, I live with somebody that I have seen getting increasingly more bitter as he goes. The main reason he hasn't played is because he's not super enjoying himself. But I do want to see him finish the game because I want to see where it goes. And I think he wants to as well. But he's just sort of... He's collapsing on it. But yeah.
Mm-mm. And I don't know if that's... I played it on the easiest difficulty. Granted, you still had some tough parts or some tricky boss fights in there. But yeah, I highly encourage and hope that you get to see that through. Well, let's get to talking about some composer follow-up news. The composers that we talk about on this show, they're still busy. They keep working on things. And here are a couple headlines from the past week. First of all, the Nether update is available for Minecraft. And this is notable because it features music from Lena Raine, who composed on Celeste and other games. So we mentioned that. She had announced that. It was several weeks ago at this point, but that's finally out.
Yeah. I have not played it yet. I hear that it adds a bunch of really cool stuff to the Nether, but Minecraft is one of those games where every once in a while I just get sucked in the hole and then don't come out for a month. So we'll have to see. Dunk Lords is currently free on Xbox Live Games with Gold. That is the NBA Jam style game that has music done by Laura Shigihara, who we have talked about both in terms of her work on her own game Rakuen, as well as To the Moon with Kangao.
And finally, Professor Layton and the Unwound Future, or the Lost Future if you're in the UK, is releasing on mobile, iOS, and Android on July 13th. This continues the HD remasters, so to speak, of the Professor Layton games on mobile. When are they coming to Switch? That's what I gotta ask. But we did talk about that game pretty early on in the show's run, featuring music from Tomohito Nishiura.
Yeah, put them on Switch, please. I beg you. This is all I ask. Put them on Switch, and then also the other 3 Ace Attorneys, and then also the other 3 Laytons.
All of them.
All of them. Everything. But, with that being said, it's time to get into our first game. And this game is a time and a half. Deadly Premonition was originally released on the Xbox 360 in North America on February 23rd, 2010, and in Europe on October 29th. In Japan, it would release on March 11th, 2010 on both the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, but we would not get it on the PS3, either us or Europe, until 3 years later on April 30th, 2013, and it didn't come out in Australia at all until May 16th, 2013. Because of ratings issues. Back then, Australia's government was infamously really harsh and strict about what games could or could not come out in the country. I don't hear about that very often anymore, so I don't think that's an issue now.
Yeah, I think it got relaxed a little bit.
It would also be released on PC worldwide on October 29th, 2013, and then a Nintendo Switch release titled Deadly Premonition Origins actually came out last year on September 4th, 2019. So, Deadly Premonition was developed by Access Games and published by several different companies. Ignition Entertainment published it in North America, Marvelous Entertainment in Japan, Rising Star Games in Europe. They also would publish the PC and PS3 versions of the game worldwide. The Switch version was published by Toybox Games. So, a lot of people passed that game around. That might be the most publishers per version of any game I think we have talked about.
I think that's right, yeah.
So, it is one of the first games to be almost entirely spearheaded by Hidetaka Suehiro, or as he is more commonly known, Swery or Swery65. He had worked as a director and a writer on a couple of games before this, like 2 or 3 of them. But this is the first one where he is not only the co-writer, but he is also the director, and he is also the designer.
He is the Tommy Wiseau, so to speak, minus the acting bit.
Pretty much. Deadly Premonition is a mystery game / third-person shooter / survival horror game, not really, where the player takes control of FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan, but call him York. Everybody calls him York. That's how he introduces himself to every single character. That entire spiel every time he meets a new character. When a young woman named Anna Graham is murdered in the rural town of Greenvale, Washington, York is sent in to investigate due to the killing's similarity to a string of serial murders that are happening across the United States.
Anna Graham?
Yeah, her name is Anna Graham.
Okay, alright, cool, cool.
What's wrong with that name?
Nothing wrong with it.
Does it sound like something that came out of Ace Attorney? Because it sure is.
Hey, hope everyone had a great July 4th. Red, white, blue.
York is weird. He's a really huge weirdo. He is constantly talking about movies he has watched. And let me tell you something about Swery. This man has watched a lot of Western films, and goddammit, you are going to sit here and you are going to listen to him tell you about all of them. All of them. You get in a car and York just sort of talks for like 5 full minutes about some obscure B movie that he watched once. It's weird. York is also largely rude and dismissive of the citizens of Greenvale. He regularly refers to it as the backwoods. Like they're a bunch of primitives because they live in like a country town and not the city like he's used to. It's weird. He has an obsession with coffee. He uses coffee to like tell the future or something. I don't know. And he's constantly talking to some invisible partner named Zach. He is about as eccentric as video game protagonists could possibly ever get. And eccentric is a word I use generously. So, with the help of the town sheriff George Woodman, his deputy sheriff Emily Wyatt, and George's assistant Thomas McLean, York must investigate Anna's death while also eluding a mysterious entity known as the Raincoat Killer, as well as deal with the strange otherworld that appears in Greenvale whenever it rains. Greenvale, in terms of gameplay, runs on an in-game clock that is essentially always moving forward, very similar to games like Shenmue, or, to put it in the context of a game we've talked about, Majora's Mask. Certain places, sequences, and events are only available at certain time frames, and there is no punishment for missing these windows. The player just has to wait and try again tomorrow. This will happen a lot. All the time. Time can be passed by either sleeping or, because Deadly Premonition was actually a game far ahead of its time, smoking. What? Speaking of sleeping, York also has to keep up with his own health throughout the game. He has a sleep and hunger bar that are both always depleting, and they can only be filled up by, as you've probably guessed, eating or sleeping. If he does not sleep, he'll start to get hungry much faster, and if he does not eat, he will lose health until he either eats or dies. York also has to keep himself clean-shaven and make sure he's getting his suits cleaned and also changing into clean suits every day. The game will actually, like, you'll start to have, like, flies buzzing around you if you don't, and people will respond differently to you.
Why? Why is that a thing?
Because it's sweary. In interviews I read, he also mentioned that he wanted your weight to be able to fluctuate and also your hair to grow. So,
well, I mean, The Witcher 3 got hair to grow.
I guess. So, yeah, Swery was just ahead of his time at this point. I think we can all agree on that. There are also combat encounters, usually taking place in the aforementioned Otherworld. York must make his way through twisted versions of a location covered in red vines where he's attacked by strange, zombie-like creatures and shadows, and it's weird. So, the mystery boils down to who killed Anna Graham? What is the significance of the mysterious red seeds? Who is the Raincoat Killer? And what connection does this all have to the other murders throughout the country? And Peter, this is where I'll ask you, what are your experiences with Deadly Premonition?
Oh, I got nothing. On you. I know of, Swery's, how to put it, strangeness as a director. But that's honestly about it. And I know one song on the soundtrack.
So for me, I learned about Deadly Premonition because of the now defunct channel Super Best Friends Play. It was, I think, one of their first full-length Let's Plays was a full play of the director's cut version of Deadly Premonition. That's the PS3 version that we got. I watched that whole LP. It's so weird. It's so weird. I have only played the Switch version. I played enough to be able to write a review of it, which you can go find that review on Nintendo World Report. It sure is a video game. I love it. It's so weird. It's so weird. Everything in that game is just slightly wrong. It's all in this way that, like, man, you guys you had all the parts to make a pretty alright game here. And then, like, it's like, get in this car. Oh my god, you guys spent all of your time programming working windshield wipers and not programming a car that drives well. What were you doing? Or like, the combat is really bad. And I'll explain why in a bit, because there's an actual reason for that we know about. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. It's ugly. It is ugly. Even for its time, it was ugly. Even when it came out in 2010, once again, we know why, and I'll get into it, but this game is awful. And if you like movies like The Room, you owe it to yourself to either watch or play Deadly Premonition. It is fascinating, and I genuinely do believe that it should be showed in schools because it's somehow art. It is deep art. I don't know how else to describe it. It's weird. So let's talk about what led to this absolutely bizarre entry into video game history. So Access Games was originally founded in 1996 as a computer graphics producer. But in 2002, they decided to dip their toes into the video game development world. I tried to find if they were called something else before that, but nothing mentioned it. They might have still been called Access Games because I think they were doing computer graphics for games. And then they decided, well, why not just make our own games? Is what I assume happened. I couldn't find a huge amount of information on their pre-video game development history. So to do this, they hired Swery, who had up until that point bounced around multiple different studios, including SNK and Whoopee Camp. He worked on a bunch of games for SNK, and he worked on Tomba 2 for Whoopee Camp, specifically. Their first release as a developer was a stealth game for the PlayStation 2 called Spy Fiction, and that was actually the first game on which Swery served as writer and director. That was the first time in his career. And shortly after that, in fall of 2004, the studio began work on a new title called Rainy Woods. So, this was once again being spearheaded by Swery. A prototype for Rainy Woods had been completed by October of 2005, and then by March of 2006, the game was already in alpha. So it was moving a little bit slowly, but they were taking their time, it seems. Rainy Woods featured a young and cynical FBI agent named David Young Henning. I would actually remember that name for a little factoid later on. And he was in a very similar role to the one York would go on to fill. He was an FBI agent going to a small country town to investigate a murder. The trailer for Rainy Woods debuted at the 2007 Tokyo Game Show, where a lot of journalists seemed to make the same observation, being that, boy, this is just a legally distinct Twin Peaks game. Huh. Twin Peaks, for those who don't know, is a TV show that was produced by David Lynch, starring an FBI agent going to a small country town to investigate a murder, and he really loves coffee.
Does sound very similar indeed.
I don't know where this rumor started. I think it has since been found that it's not true. But there was a rumor that when asked about it at one point, Swery said, "I've never seen Twin Peaks." To which everybody responded, "Dude, yes you have." As far as I can tell, and as far as people we know who have looked into it, he didn't ever actually say that. That is something the internet made up. But I like that story. And with that disclaimer, I wish in my heart to believe it is true. Swery has never seen Twin Peaks. So soon after this trailer, Rainy Woods was actually canceled due to technological difficulties that were apparently closely tied to the fact that it was planned to be developed for both the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox 360.
What?
Not the Xbox, the 360. And it turns out, big surprise, those two systems weren't super compatible when it came to everything. So the game got canceled. I thought that was a typo when I read it the first time. I found two other sources confirming that no, 360 and PS2 Not PS3 and 360, not PS2 and Xbox. I don't know. I don't get it. But in 2008, Swery essentially rebooted development on Rennie Woods by picking up the assets that were originally made for the project and combining them with a new scenario and design. And this is the project that would ultimately become Deadly Premonition. Swery's main goal for the game was apparently to make something that players could complete at their own pace without a real sense of urgency, which, man, a murder investigation seems like a weird place to do that. But you do you. He also wanted to focus on making Greenvale feel like a real rural American town. And to that end, apparently the team, just to make sure the scale was right, went to an American town and took measurements of things like railroad crossings and billboards and roads, just to make sure everything was the right measurements.
So, as you keep saying Greenvale, I have to interject and say I'm glad that it's not Greendale, because then I keep thinking of Community.
You know what? I didn't even think about it. I forgot it was called Greendale. Now I'm going to say Greendale at least once on accident during this episode now, and we both know that's going to happen.
Oops, sorry.
So, through all this, this was actually not being done with Access Games' official blessing.
Oh, what?
That would not be gotten until March of 2009. And from there, the game was apparently threatened with cancellation 4 separate times. This game came out in February of 2010, which means in the span of less than 1 year, this game was almost canceled 4 times.
Wow.
When asked what the budget for the game was like, Swery simply answered, "Not very much." Then, when the team was trying to appeal more to Western audiences, because that was another goal they had, they were really trying to focus more on the West than they were Japan, which is weird for that time, but the Japanese industry was sort of in a weird place back in that era. The publisher came to them and said, "Hey, this game's not going to sell unless you have combat in it," because at this point, there was no combat in Deadly Premonition.
Oh no.
And so very late in development, they added the combat sections.
Good. Great.
So to sum it all up, the game was using assets from a failed project that was originally being built for the PlayStation 2, had next to no budget, faced cancellation no less than 4 times in just under 1 year, and had entire swaths of the game added very late in development. So how'd that turn out? The game got mixed reception on release. The general consensus is that Deadly Premonition is not a very good game. And yet somehow, that's what makes it a great game. The game got slammed for its dated graphics and the fact that it did so many different types of gameplay, yet truly succeeded at none of them. Yet, critics also really liked the confusing and befuddling characters and plot. And one review apparently even called York one of the most interesting gaming protagonists in years. There is one example, I think, that is the absolute best example of how weird this game must have been to review back then. And that is IGN. Their UK branch gave the game a 7.5. Their US branch gave the game a 2. And so many of these, reviews, there were a lot of 7s, a surprising amount of 7s. I think I gave it a 7 when I reviewed it. But they were all like, this game sucks, and yet I can't look away from it, and I finished it. It is riddled with bugs. It is barely functioning. It is falling apart at the seams. Even for 2010, the game was super ugly. because, it was using assets made for a PlayStation 2 game and putting them on the Xbox 360. Every character is a bizarre caricature of a human. I mean, every single citizen of Greenvale is a massive weirdo, and York is somehow the weirdest one of them all. Every aspect of gameplay sort of controls very similarly to a dog wearing roller skates. And that's all part of Deadly Premonition's charm. Like, it's awful, but that makes it really good. I don't know. It is the most bizarre game to try and put into words ever that I've ever experienced. Deadly Premonition was not even remotely financially successful. After 3 months of having been out in North America, it had sold a total of 50,000 copies. That's abysmal. Didn't even break 100,000. But that did not stop the game from building up a massive cult following. It's yet another one of those games that just has a huge cult fan base now. So much so that after 10 years, a sequel is finally coming out, which is Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise. That releases this Friday, July 10th, 2020, as an exclusive for Nintendo Switch. It is a prequel sequel thing. It technically takes place both before and after the first game. And in that game, you follow York through a murder case in the small Louisiana town of Le Carré, and it sure is a game. I can't say a lot on it, but just take my word for it, it sure is a video game. Swery would actually continue his work with Access Games following the release of Deadly Premonition, working on several games, such as the PSP title Lord of Arcana, which was actually in development at the same time as Deadly Premonition, and is another reason why that game's development was so screwed up. He also made an Xbox Connect title, like an exclusive Connect game titled D4, Dark Dreams Don't Die. It was supposed to be an episodic game. Only one episode was ever released, I think. 1 or 2? I don't actually remember.
Just one, and you could also play it with a controller if you wanted to, but you could use Kinect if you had it.
My favorite part of that game is it happens to star an investigator named David Young. Which, if you were paying attention, that was York's prototype name in Rainy Woods. Following D4, Swery actually left Access Games to go on to form his own studio, White Owls Inc., and through them he developed The Missing, J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories. He's currently working on The Good Life, and that is also where he developed Deadly Premonition 2. So, let's talk about the composer. The composer we're going to focus on today is Riyou Kinugasa. At least, I wish I could say that, but there's nothing. This person is a ghost. I don't know their age. I don't know what they look like. I don't know where they were born, when they were born, where they work now. I can't even find their pronouns. There is nothing on this person anywhere on the internet. Try as I might to find it, except for their discography. I found that. I found the games they have worked on, which makes it even weirder that I can't find any information on them, because they have served as sound editor and sound effects producer for games like Resident Evil 0, Dragon Quest Monsters, Caravan Heart, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, Avatar The Last Airbender, and Avatar The Last Airbender, The Burning Earth, Front Mission, Chrono Trigger on the DS, Resident Evil Revelations, and the 2014 remake of Dragon Warrior 3. They also served as music programmer on both Dragon Quest Heroes games. And in terms of doing music composition, as far as I can tell, they've only done 3 games, being Game & Watch Gallery 4, Deadly Premonition, and Story of Seasons, which is what Harvest Moon is now. And there is no information on them at all. They don't have a Wikipedia article. They don't have any articles on any fan wikis. They have no information on VGMDB. There's nothing. There's nothing on this person. This is the least information I've ever found on anybody in this show. Ever.
Sometimes you try, and sometimes it's like this on the internet, especially for a Japanese composer.
Yeah. So, in terms of the soundtrack, I also couldn't find a lot of information on the soundtrack that didn't really apply to specific tracks, so I saved it there. It was composed by Riyou Kinugasa, Takuya Kobayashi, and Hiromi Mizutani. With that out of the way, let's get into those 5 critical tracks. Strap in, everybody. This soundtrack is weird. And the best example of how weird it is our first critical track, Green Veil.
I hear the voice in green veil, night and day, misty rain, hide and seek, you and I.
This song was composed by Riyou Kinugasa, lyrics by Morihiro Iwamoto, and vocals by Misako Yamashita. This plays during the intro of the game. It is supposed to be like the main theme of the town, but I believe you only hear it in the intro video. This is what you should expect from not just the soundtrack, but the game. This tone right here, this really weird, off-putting, kind of dark, weirdo feel. I think the song gets kind of good later on. Overall, I think it's an alright song, but man, this song is bizarre. It's so weird.
It does kind of give you the heebie-jeebies for like a song with actual sung vocals. There's just something off about it.
Which, I mean, that fits. That checks out.
Yeah.
The vocalist does a very good job at making it feel off. A thing about Deadly Premonition is sometimes you start to think, was this on purpose? And you don't get an answer. From there, let's go into critical track number 2, The Woods and the Goddess. This song was composed by Hiromi Mizutani, vocals by Bro Y. Sure they were. This is essentially considered the main theme of Deadly Premonition. It plays on the title screen and also plays during several cutscenes, usually drowning out the dialogue in that cutscene. Usually. Man, the audio mix in this game is a disaster. Did I mention that? Oh my god, it's a disaster. It's amazing. I think this is actually one of my favorite songs in the game, though. I think it's very pretty. The vocals, once again, are really weird, but I mean, I'll always take more acoustic guitar in my life.
Yeah, and it sounds like there are different versions of this, so like an instrumental version or with vocals. Yeah, the vocals, take it or leave it, just sounds like a kind of da 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 da.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Peculiar, yeah,
Peculiar is a good word for it. But following that, I'm going to bet you money. I'll say this before the song plays. I'm going to bet you money you've heard this song before. Somewhere. Because our third critical track is Life is Beautiful. If you've heard any song from this game, you heard this one. YouTubers love to use this song. This is the most famous song to come out of Deadly Premonition. A lot of people don't even realize it's from Deadly Premonition. I think you mentioned you hadn't realized this was from Deadly Premonition.
I didn't. We were talking about it. It was probably several weeks ago, just on our own time. And I'm like, you're gonna put the whistle song, right? That's the only one I know. And even weeks before that, or even years maybe, like I came across it, and it's like, oh, this is Deadly Premonition. This is Swery's game. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I love this song. It's so infectiously happy. It gives me kind of a Katamari vibe almost. This feels like a song I would hear in a Katamari game.
For sure.
Which means it doesn't fit in this game at all. But this song plays during my favorite scene in the entire game. York is sitting on the other side of a very long table of the old lady who owns the hotel, Polly. And they're trying to have a conversation, and Polly's like 80 years old and can't hear him. And so he has to like shout to make sure she can hear him. And all the while this song is playing, but the audio mix is so bad that this song is completely drowning out everything almost that is happening on screen. And for a second, you're like, what, is this on purpose? Like, because the conversation is about how it's like the gag is that she can't understand him or hear him. So is this on purpose? Did they drown this out on purpose? And then later in the game, other scenes will happen and the music will drown that out too. And then you go, oh no, it's just, they didn't try to mix it.
Oh no.
And then in the director's cut, they quote unquote fixed the audio mix. Would you like to know how would you fix that audio mix problem, Peter? Tell me, as an audio person yourself.
If I were making the mix, you'd bring the music levels down, but I'm gonna guess they raised the dialogue levels up.
They just upped the gain on all the dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's just like, guys, all you had to do was turn the music down. I love this game. This song is great. So let's talk about, I'm sweating. Let's talk about critical track number 4. Let's move on. This is Underground. This is mainly the theme of the Red Room, which, by the way, is a mysterious realm that only York can enter, very similar to a very similar red mysterious realm that Agent Dale Cooper could only access in the show Twin Peaks by David Lynch.
But he hasn't seen it.
I like to describe this song as being played by a dying saxophonist who is desperately trying to beg for help and or death. It does have this, like, it's supposed to imply a lot of like mystery and like a mysterious atmosphere, and it does overall do that. But when I was talking about my Critical 5 with my roommate Ben, who actually watched me play like the first hour of this game on Switch, he was like, yeah, I don't recognize the name of any of these songs. And I got to Underground, and within seconds, the instant the saxophone played one note, he was like, all right. Immediately. This song's hilarious.
See, if I had to make an estimation of what this sounds like being in a jazz lounge inside Silent Hill.
A little bit.
Because especially with those heavy keys at the beginning, like you kind of get some Yamaoka vibes, maybe some like Fermata and Mystic Air a little bit. I don't know. That's kind of the The saxophone sure is. That's right on. But I kind of feel like Silent Hill, but if it were in a jazz lounge.
See, I get that feeling from the next critical track, more so than anything else. And that track is Red Tree. If you didn't guess, this is the theme of the red tree. It's a tree that is red, that grows the red seeds that are a big mystery in the game. This song is apparently supposed to represent madness as a concept. Got it.
Yeah.
You did it.
I mean, yeah, if you're doing Silent Hill as like Pyramid Heads chasing after you, sure. Yes.
Yeah, this song really stands out on the soundtrack, I think. It was apparently one of the more difficult pieces on the soundtrack for them to create, mostly due to all the improvisation that was involved in it. It should be noted, Life is Beautiful is actually cited as the easiest song for them to compose, which that checks out. I mean, it's a simple song. It works out real well. I can also see why this song would be super hard to put together in a satisfying manner, but I think, honestly, they did a pretty good job.
For what they're aiming for, yes, this checks out and seems to fit perfectly.
Like, this song is absolute chaos. Works great. So with that, let's get... I saved the weirdest for last. I think, on the cutting room floor, I have two songs. The first one is Miss Stiletto Heels.
Like prisoner, you are conscious of my innocence. Everyone's just
This song was composed by Riyou Kinugasa, lyrics by Morihiro Iwamoto, vocals by, and this is where the idea that maybe that off-putting feeling in Greenvale wasn't on purpose, Misako Yamashita, the same lady. What the hell? This song is apparently supposed to be a secondary main theme of the game. If you go listen to the whole thing, and God, I recommend listening to the whole song, it starts out pretty normal. And then the singer melts on stage. It's so weird. This lady can sing. She can sing because she sings in Greenvale. It's not the best singing in the world, but like, she can sing. She's got a fine voice. What is this? Like, I don't know, man.
It's something. It's something, all right.
Sure is something. But the song that actually had me crying laughing when I heard it, because I had never heard this song, or if I had, I hadn't heard it in a long time, is Racing Idiot. What do I even say here?
Don't wanna be a racing idiot.
This is the most blatant I've ever seen any song be ever. They called it Racing Idiot. They didn't even try to hide it. This is the most legally distinct song I've ever heard in my life.
Here's the weird thing. Like, I've listened to like an audio library and pull for different video projects and whatnot. And I've come across an actual, like, more legally distinct version of Green Day's American Idiot. So why is it always this song? Why is it always American Idiot?
Why did they just call it racing idiot. I forgot there was racing in this game. I completely forgot. Mainly because I stayed away from cars.
Right. Well, that means they knew 100% what they were doing.
Oh, it's so... What will I never forget about this game? How is this game real? I genuinely... Even after learning about the development story, how is this game real? How did this game come out? It baffles me. I'm so happy it did. But what the hell was happening in that studio space?
I'm kind of curious now. Not gonna lie. I like the room. I like the room a lot. Maybe I gotta give Deadly Premonition a try.
I would recommend it. It's not hard. I believe they distinctly made it not hard because Swery did not want it to be a hard game. It's still buggy as hell. It's still buggy as hell. It plays terribly. It's not a hard game. I don't remember how long it is, but if you have any interest in, much in the same way I think the next game we're going to talk about should be taught in schools, this game should be taught in schools as a checklist of like, all right, don't do it this way. Don't do this way. Unless you are Hidetaka Suehiro, who is the only person that can get away with it seems.
Maybe I shouldn't play it after The Last of Us Part 2, though.
Probably not. Maybe give a bit of space between those two particular title. And like I said, I can't say a lot about the sequel. Full disclosure, I got an early copy. I'm the reviewer for NWR that's working on it. The embargo actually lets up tomorrow at time of release, so look forward to seeing my review then. It's more Deadly Premonition, for better or for worse. So, that felt good to talk about. Let's get our transition. And it had to be a cover of Life is Beautiful. I don't actually think I would have been able to find anything else. Maybe a Miss Stiletto Heels cover that turned it into a song that was not being sung by a sentient Grimer. But Life is Beautiful is the song, and I managed to find a delightful little cover by YouTuber PPF. So please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
Okay, wow, that guy is a really talented whistler.
Yeah, very much so.
That's really good. The bending, the vibrato, I'm super impressed. That's a great cover. Let's talk about our next game in this cult classic, so bad it's good duology of games. Let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog from 2006. Now, we talked about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in episode 9. And Sonic Adventure 2 in episode 17. And now as we sit here in episode 76, I can't believe it's been that long since we talked about a Sonic game.
Yeah, I thought it was way... Oh my god, Sonic Adventure 2 and Mario 64 was all the way back in episode 17. Oh, that's nuts, actually.
We're zooming along here on this show, I'll tell you. But here we are talking about Sonic 06. Sonic the Hedgehog was released on Xbox 360 in North America on November 14th, 2006. November 24th for the PAL regions. Then it released on PlayStation 3 in North America. Because remember, PS3 came out, I believe it was November 19th, 17th, maybe. Around there in 2006. So it wasn't going to be a launch title. So released on PS3 in North America on January 30th, 2007, so a couple months later. And in March 23rd for the PAL regions for 2007. This is also released later to incorporate DLC of extra single-player modes. And so, like, all this was bundled together in the PS3 version. The game released in Japan for both systems on December 21st, 2006. It is developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega. What is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006? It's a 3D platformer.
Arguably.
Where a hedgehog must reach the goal ring at the end of the stage. There are 3 playable characters. You have Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, and they all go through the same 10 action stages. Sonic runs at full speed, and sometimes he's on a snowboard. Shadow is also speedy, but he focuses more on combat, and he also has some vehicles that he can get into. And Silver uses telekinesis to solve puzzles. You need to collect golden rings in the stages, but don't get hit when you don't have any, or else you'll lose a life. The story, I feel like I let Wikipedia take a hold of this one because it's probably best that they sum it up. Quote, Dr. Eggman kidnaps Princess Elise of Soleanna in the hopes of harnessing the flames of disaster, a destructive power sealed within her. Aided by his friends Tails and Knuckles, Sonic works to protect Elise from Eggman. Meanwhile, Shadow and his fellow agent Rouge accidentally release an evil spirit, Mephiles. The spirit transports them to a post-apocalyptic future ravaged by a demonic monster, Iblis. When Mephiles meets survivors Silver and Blaze, he fools them into thinking Sonic is the cause of this destruction and sends them to the present to kill him. So, can each hedgehog learn to work together to stop Mephiles? Is it any use? Joe, here's where I'll ask you what are our experiences with Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, or as it's more commonly called, Sonic 06.
I love this game. I'm so happy it's real. I'm so happy it exists. I've played it. Not much, but I have played it. It is transcendent in how every last bit of it is bad and wrong. There is one good thing about Sonic 06, which is the main reason why it's here today. And everything else is like, if you want to make video games, you should be required to play and research Sonic 06.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have not played Sonic 06. I've seen quite a bit of it, though. And you're right. The one thing that is not affected by how this game went so terribly wrong is the soundtrack. The music's actually really good. Like, low-key, a great soundtrack. But that's because you can make music on your own and not be affected by all of the problems that this game went through. So, I'm glad we're talking about it today. I'm glad it got paired with Deadly Premonition. It's the perfect pairing, I think. And I'm so excited to talk about it, because I learned quite a bit about the development history. I always knew it was bad, but I never knew how bad. So, development started in 2004, and it was targeting a series reboot for Sonic the Hedgehog for the next-gen systems at the time of Xbox 360 and PS3. Other systems were also planned as well at the time, but we'll get to that shortly. They were targeting a release year of 2006 because it just so happened to be the series' 15th anniversary, and so it was a way to reboot it, be an anniversary kind of thing. It all would kind of work out. Now, the developer Sonic Team was just coming off of 2003's Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, and wanted to create a game with a more realistic tone, as well as using an advanced physics engine. In fact, the supposed creator of Sonic, Yuji Naka, was seeing the success throughout development of films like Spider-Man 2 and Batman Begins from 2004 and 2005, and he wanted to do that with Sonic and try to reach a wide audience.
Those movies can do a realistic tone because they're about humans.
Well, Joe, how do you try to reach a wide appeal then with all these cartoon hedgehogs? You try to put humans in the game. For better or for worse.
It's for the second one. It's the second one.
They changed Dr. Eggman to make him look more like an actual human character. They make him a little skinnier. They give him real hair with his mustache. And this is the first game to feature Sonic's modern look. He's taller, he has longer quills, and he has green eyes.
Oh God, this was the one. This was the first one. Oh my God.
Green eyes. Very evident on that soundtrack cover and even in the box art. So they created a new hedgehog for this game called Silver the Hedgehog. And his design took more than 50 iterations. But it was his gameplay in particular that was born out of a desire to do more with the Havoc physics engine. And yeah, it sure tried, I guess. Shadow would have guns scrapped because Shadow the Hedgehog was like the year before and that wasn't great. So they took guns away from Shadow and they still made his gameplay more about combat, putting him in vehicles of all things. But for Sonic in particular, it was all about a return to speed if you're going to reboot the game. And especially when his last big outing in Sonic Heroes, gameplay was kind of slowed down with a lot of puzzles, with changing between the characters to do different things. It wasn't about that pure speed get to the goal. So, it sounds like it could be a promising game, right? Well, then trouble happened because Yuji Naka resigned as the head of Sonic Team in March 2006. He decided to form his own company, Prope, along with 10 other members of Sonic Team. That's right, in the middle of trying to get the game polished and pull things together and finish up content, he's like, I don't want to make Sonic games anymore. I've done that. I'm done. I want to make my own games. Okay, so the heart and soul of Sonic is now ripped away from Sonic Team with a few other people. What else could go wrong? Well, then let's consider the other platforms that the game was aiming for at the time. And this would be Nintendo Wii and PC. See, Sonic Team then got Nintendo's specs for the Wii and learned that the Wii would be drastically underpowered compared to what they were expecting, especially when they were speccing it up against the Xbox 360, which was already out at that point, and PlayStation 3. So, okay, porting the game to Wii not only would take too long, it just wouldn't work. And then there's also this whole motion control thing with the Wii remote. It's just not going to work to have Sonic the Hedgehog for 2006 come out on Wii. I'm sorry, we got to scrap that. Well, then Sega, the publisher, decided, okay, well, this Nintendo platform's still coming out. How about you guys make a whole new game for Nintendo Wii? This would end up being Sonic and the Secret Rings. It would end up releasing in early 2007. But the idea of Sonic Team creating a whole new game on top of Sonic 06 means the team was split in half after Yuji Naka had already left. Not a great idea, to be honest, especially when development was still going on, granted in somewhat the later stages. Oh, and then also, here's one more note from Sega. You need to release Sonic 06 for the holiday season of 2006. It's March 2006. Have fun!
Always a method of development that works out every time.
Because it's the 15th anniversary. You can't miss the 15th anniversary year. It's gotta hit. You gotta do it. So Sonic Team rushed the final stages of development, ignored bug reports from Sega's quality assurance department, and just ignored any problems with the controls. Producer Takashi Iizuka recalled, quote, "We didn't have any time to polish, and we were just churning out content as quickly as we could." And obviously, a PC version got pushed totally to the wayside when you had to get it done for 360 and a subsequent PS3 release. When the game comes out, there's a scene where Sonic dies, and Princess Elise kisses Sonic on the mouth in the game. And what? So, believe it or not, the game originally showed well in preview builds at trade events. And a lot of outlets were really positive on the possibility of this being a revitalization, like a reboot, a retooling of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. But yeah, the game was ultimately a critical failure, with an average Metacritic score of 46 on Xbox 360 and 43 on PS3. I would believe this would make it the worst game that we've covered so far on this show, and I'm not sure what's going to beat it.
I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going to beat Sonic 06. If there was anything to praise, it would be the graphics, the amount of content, and the replay value. But otherwise, as GameSpot put it in their review, it's a game that, quote, only the most blindly reverent Sonic the Hedgehog fan could possibly squeeze any enjoyment out of.
I take issue with that. I squeezed a lot of enjoyment out of this game for the wrong reasons.
I mean, that may be a little bit of a masochistic streak there, but the loading times, the camera system, the story, the game's stability, the controls, these are all big problems. And I don't like to call out a single reviewer, but I'm unfortunately going to have to do that because when looking down the list of review scores on Wikipedia, one stood out in particular. And this would be Play Magazine's review written by Dave Halverson. And Dave Halverson seemed to be the game's most ardent defender in the critic space. He initially gave the Xbox 360 release a 9.5 out of 10, praising each character's controls and abilities and calling it the best 3D Sonic game yet. In the following issue of the magazine, Halverson reassessed it as 8.5 out of 10, writing that he had not been told that the load times and glitches in his review copy would not be in the final version of the game. For what it's worth, the 8.5 out of 10 version was one that I actually read. And it's a look if you want to see what some game critics were like in 2006 when he's talking about how, I mean, it's what I like, and if it were just a first person shooter, I would just give it a 3 to 5 automatically because they're just so littered in the space. And I'm like, bro, you gotta wait until the early 2010s there. But also, it's a read. I'll say that much. Though, when this was clear that the game was a struggling mess in the final version of the game, Dave would ultimately give the later released PS3 version a 5.5 out of 10. Yet, Sonic the Hedgehog sold 870,000 units in the United States and Europe within 6 months. It was later dubbed a Platinum Hits title on Xbox 360.
It was what?
So I don't think it was a commercial failure necessarily. Maybe not as high as they wanted to, but maybe there was a fascination there. I don't know. Found it interesting that it was released digitally on Xbox Live on April 15th, 2010, but it was removed from the platform later that year in October, along with other poorly reviewed Sonic games to remove brand clutter in advance of Sonic the Hedgehog 4 and Sonic Colors.
What other poorly reviewed games would there have been at that point? It would have just been that one, wouldn't it? Because wasn't it like Sonic 06 and then, oh, wow, we're just going to wait a little while, and then Colors.
Unleashed was in 2008.
Ah, there it is.
So, well, at least Unleashed was better.
Unleashed is better than 06.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, 06 is better than Unleashed. But again, that is for the wrong reasons.
But when we talk about the awards that games win on this show,
this game didn't win anything.
No. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 is widely mocked among the series' worst games. Granted, some games since then rival it, if not surpass it. boom. But the game is certainly popular with Let's Players. Famously Game Grumps and Knuckles being stuck on the rock. And there's just other famous Let's Plays of this game. It's a popular one to bag on.
I'm told that Poke Captain's Let's Play is one of the best Let's Plays ever made by our friend Matt, who never, ever shuts up about that Let's Play. One day I'll watch it. I don't know.
I do hear good things about that one as well. As far as characters moving on in the legacy of Sonic 06, it's Silver. It's Silver.
Silver's the only one that got carried over.
Because, yeah, he would show up in future Sonic games, but Elise, Nephiles, Iblis, I just put them in a bin. Forget about them. They never happened. Elise never kissed Sonic. It didn't happen.
She's not real.
She's not real at all. Even the Crisis City stage, as well as a Silver boss battle, appeared in Sonic Generations, which was the 2011 game that was the 20th anniversary game of Sonic. And there's no way we're less than a year from Sonic's 30th anniversary, right? Generations is almost 10 years old.
Oh no. Oh no, you're right.
Yeah, wow. Scary.
Wasn't Forces the 25th anniversary game?
No, it was 2017.
What was the 25th anniversary?
I don't think they had one. That's why people always talk about, like, Sonic Adventure 3? Sonic Adventure 3? Is it going to happen? Was that... No. Oh, was it Mania?
No, Mania came out the same year as Forces, I thought.
It did.
Huh. I guess they just ignored the 25th anniversary.
You'd think that'd be an important one, right? I don't know. Interesting. The Sonic games did continue, as we mentioned, on console with Sonic Unleashed in 2008. I think it was Rush Adventure in 2007 on DS. So yeah, didn't kill the series, but it got people talking about the Sonic cycle. That sure was a thing. But like we mentioned, the soundtrack is legit really good. And I think it's really responsible because of Tomoya Ohtani. Tomoya Ohtani was born on July 1st, 1974. Hey, happy birthday just recently. Born in Tokyo, Japan. He began playing the piano in elementary school, but then he took a break from music and then later started to perform bass guitar in rock bands. He studied composing at Nihon University, and then he spent 3 years after school working as a composer, sound designer, and sound operator for a theater company before joining Sega in 1999, and he's still there today. He's been the sound director for the Sonic games since the mid-2000s. I'm pretty sure it was Sonic 06 that it was his first one. His favorite Sonic game is apparently Sonic Unleashed, with his favorite songs from the series being Rooftop Run, Classic, and Modern. Those would be the iterations.
Good pick.
He is the main composer on Unleashed, so I feel like there's a preference there, since then he also did those songs as well. He says, quote, "As I'm the kind of composer who changes my approach to music on each title, I will try to challenge myself to create all sorts of new types of music in my future works. Whatever I compose will be a perfect fit for whatever the game will be. But regardless of what style my tracks are, I think I'll give more importance to pop-flavored melodies and catchy sounds from now on." You can follow Tomoya Ohtani on Twitter at Ohtanitter. It's an odd amalgamation there. Wikipedia also says that he performs bass guitar when it comes to performing Sonic music live, generally alongside Jun Tsunoe. But I didn't see much of sourcing on that one, but just put it out there. Like he does perform as bass guitar sometimes on soundtracks. So I feel like bass guitar would be his main instrument that he plays today. His favorites include beer, sushi, movies, and the director Stanley Kubrick, dance music, and his favorite game is Space Channel 5.
That checks out.
So his discography when it comes to composing for the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. He started with Adventure 2. Particularly, he composed the music for the Knuckles stages in Sonic Adventure 2. He also did the Chow Garden and Chow Race themes as well. So,
I've forgotten. Does that mean he was responsible for a Ghost Pumpkin Soup?
he sure was.
This man deserves the world.
He did Wild Canyon. He did Ghost Pumpkin Soup. He did Aquatic Mine, Meteor Herd, like all the Knuckles stuff. I mean, yeah, it's 100p on the raps, but Tomoya Ohtani bringing the music, those Knuckles beats. He also contributed a song to Sonic Heroes, as well as Shadow the Hedgehog. Sonic 06 would be the big one. That's his first game as the sound director. Rush Adventure, Unleashed, Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, the 2010, 12, 16, and 20 games. Colors, Generations, Lost World, Runners, Forces, and most recently, Team Sonic Racing. Outside of Sonic, though, he composed for Choo Choo Rocket, Space Channel 5 Part 2, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, Sega Rally 2006, Knight's Journey into Dreams, Super Monkey Ball Step and Roll, Rhythm Thief and the Emperor's Treasure, as well as the Paris Caper, and Dengenki Bunko Fighting Climax.
Am I only just now finding out there's a second Rhythm Thief game?
I think it was on mobile.
Ah, that would be why.
Yeah. And then he also worked on sound effects for some games, being Skies of Arcadia, Sakura Taisen 3, or that's the third game in the Sakura Wars series, and Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise. He also arranged and remixed one song in Super Smash Bros. We like to talk about when a composer puts forth an effort towards that. Most recently, it's a pretty recent one, the Bomb Rush Blush song from Splatoon that appears in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and appeared on the Smash Bros. Website during the hype.
That is my favorite Splatoon remix, in the game. So that's awesome. That song rules.
He's got a good ear, that Tomoya Ohtani. When it comes to development history on the soundtrack for Sonic 06, along with Ohtani, other composers include Hideaki Kobayashi, Mariko Nanba, Taihei Sato, and Takahito Eguchi. We mentioned in our Sonic the Hedgehog 2 episode, when it came to Dream Come True's Sweet, 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 the song that was the inspiration for the ending theme, we mentioned how, remember there was a remix by Akon of this song that appeared in Sonic 06? Yeah, that happened. If you want to listen to a clip, played one during that Sonic 2 episode. In particular, Ohtani, quote, aimed to emphasize that it was an epic next-generation title. They really wanted to take the music to the next level, an example of this being the strings that open Sonic's main theme in the game. There's an epic level to this. But reviewers noted that, this soundtrack is really a success, that it took the series in a, quote, more mature direction with exotic setting themes, appealing contemporary tracks, and sophisticated cinematic underscore. So, we've been talking about how the soundtrack's great, despite the terrible game. What does that sound like? Let's get to the 5 critical tracks. Let's start with the first one, Wave Ocean, The Water's Edge. This is composed by Mariko Nanba and Tomoya Ohtani. It is the first stage in the game, the first of 10 action stages. And it's so bright and refreshing. I think it's actually an amazing opening stage theme. You just have this really clean electric guitar sound. These tropical drums are accenting a really tight drum machine. And eventually, throughout the piece, you get all these accents, like little flute melodies. It's so satisfying to listen to, and it just makes you feel really good. You may struggle in the gameplay department, but the music does its job nicely.
Yeah, I agree that this is just a nice sort of theme. It almost makes me feel like something from Destiny Islands. Almost.
Sure, in Kingdom Hearts.
A little more fast-paced than anything you'd hear on Destiny Islands from Kingdom Hearts. But that's kind of the tone that I get. I cannot hear this song, though. This is the one with the dolphin, right? This is the dolphin level? Yeah. Okay. that's all I got.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's a nice piece, and then we transition to something a little more grungy. Number 2 on the Critical 5 is All Hail Shadow.
All hail shadow, heroes rise again, obliterating everything that's not your friend. Nothing can stop you now, no ghost to bring you down. There's nothing left to lose, you win.
All Hail Shadow is written by Jun Sonoe and Mike Suter. This version is performed by Crush 40. And it's Shadow's theme. Now, granted, you gotta love Crush 40. Most of the stuff they touch is gold. It's that classic Sonic Adventure 2 butt rock that we all love. So, Crush 40's take on this theme is really interesting because this is originally Shadow's theme from Shadow the Hedgehog. So it's not originated from this game, but I feel like it's significantly better. It's interesting to go back to listen to All Hail Shadow from Shadow the Hedgehog. It's different, but regardless, the piece is it's so edgy. You win. I first heard this version in Sonic Generations. And I'll make that as a disclaimer. A lot of what I heard music-wise from Sonic 06, I first heard in Sonic Generations. And so this one was copied directly. And it's like, oh, it's a really good song. But then in research, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it makes sense that it would appear in Shadow the Hedgehog, but that's just a different version. I like it here. I think it fits to include one of the 3 protagonist themes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't this from Shadow the Hedgehog? But I've never heard the original version. I didn't know there was a non-Crush 40 version, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would have heard this for the first time in Sonic Generations, though this is not the song that I associate with Shadow ever. It's still I forget what it's called, but the song that plays when you fight him in Adventure 2.
For True Story.
Yeah, that one. That is still the song that I associate with Shadow the hardest. But it's Crush 40. What I was going to say, it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that too. And the Generations remix of that is super cool. But there's something just so extra about All Hail Shadow. I kind of love it. Number 3 on the Critical 5. This is Crisis City. The 4th stage of 10 in the game definitely stands out with these powerful melodic hits and the relentless electronic drum beat. You get the building violin backing of the but the ba 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 da ba da ba. It stands out for sure. And I'll throw it out there, this is another one I heard first in Generations, but those remixes are amazing.
Yeah, I prefer those to the original. Not that the original is bad, but wow, those versions are good.
Yeah, so this one's good, and maybe it's my Generations influence that I'm thinking of those more, but this is still a great theme. You're playing in this like volcano-like level. Crisis City. Yeah, things are chaotic for stage 4 out of 10. But I feel like this is a good one to include in a critical 5.
Yeah, it's a really good song. I do know that Crisis City is generally where a lot of people end their playthroughs of Sonic 06, as far as I'm aware. This is about the level where people go, oh, I don't want to. But yeah, I really like this song. I agree the Generations versions are by and far improved on it, which when the song is already this good to start with, man, that is saying something. Generations has such a good soundtrack. Wow.
It really, really does. Number 4 on the critical 5. This is Dreams of an Absolution. Specifically, this version is the LB versus JS remix. So, music for the original theme of Silver's theme is done by Mariko Nanba, but this is performed by Lee Brotherton of Remix Factory on the vocals and remix arrangement, as well as Jun Sonoe on guitar. And then I learned that the vocalist, named Bentley Jones, used to be known as Lee Brotherton. So when in our first episode of Original Soundchat, I played this cover of Sanctuary by Bentley Jones on YouTube. I'm like, God, he's just got this amazing voice. And then it turns out that this is my favorite song far and away. Dreams of an Absolution, this remix from Sonic 06. Yeah. Wow, mind blown that it's the same vocalist. I'm super impressed. It's just this big wall of sound with these crazy good vocals, and then Jun Sonoe on guitars. His guitars always sound on point. It just sounds so good. And this is apparently one of Ohtani's favorite songs. Like, not that he did, but like he really likes the song as well, even though he didn't do it. So
I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is the best song of the game. This is my favorite song. This is also the song I've heard more than any other song from Sonic 06. For the weirdest reason. Being that Yakuza is a Sega franchise, and sometimes when you walk into a store, the in-store speakers will be playing songs from Sega games, and Dreams of an Absolution is one of those songs that plays quite often.
that's wild.
And I think the first time I noticed it, I was like, wait, this song sounds familiar. What is this? Oh my God, it's Silver's theme. So, I mean, it's a really good song. I'd love to hear that in a store, but yeah, I'll walk into a convenience store and it's just playing on the speakers. So I've heard this song a lot in my time in the Yakuza franchise, which is a weird place to take it.
I'll say for sure. Number 5 on the Critical 5, this is Solaris Phase 2. It is the second stage of the final boss. Look, I'm a big fan of the theme of Sonic, his world, but if I was going to mix it up a little bit and just not put like all 3 protagonists on the Critical 5, you got to do this one because it's the second stage of the final boss, and it's an orchestral version of that tune. I wonder if this started the trend of doing an orchestrated version of the main theme for the final boss, because that sure would continue going forward in Sonic Unleashed and Colors. And like, maybe that started here. So I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. Like Tomoya Ohtani, wrote that His World theme. So it makes sense that he wrote this as well. But yeah, like this is like you're doing it. You're beating the final boss. You're getting there.
And honestly, I think that it makes sense to segue into Cutting Room Floor directly from here, because my first track on the Cutting Room Floor is His World.
He's like a running man in his world, more is less. And if you want to test him, best bring your best. Don't make me spell it out, bring your best. In this world, where life is strong. In this world, life's an open book. In this world.
This is the vocal version of the same song, music by Tomoya Ohtani. It's performed by Ali Tabatabe, wow, that's a name, and Maddie Lewis of Zebrahead, who does the vocals. Ali Tabatabe does rap, and I think it's definitely the weakest of the three character themes. Dreams of an Absolution is just like 6 tiers above everything else, and then you got All Hail Shadow, and then right below it I think you have His World. I think the violin part is really cool, but I think that it works better as an instrumental song, being the example used in Critical Track number 5. I think that, and also like it's an instrumental version in Smash. Mm-hmm. That's where I first heard this song, actually, before anything else in Brawl.
Yeah, that's where it carries over for sure.
I think that's where it fits, how it does best. This song is very cool on an instrumental level. Not that the vocal version is bad. I like it too, but
And it's important to note that apparently there are like 3 versions on the vocal tracks part of the soundtrack. There's this version that is kind of like the more generally established, like main version. There's one by Zebrahead as a band. And then also Crush 40 does a version. And I feel like it's the one Crush 40 song that it's like not that good, especially compared to the other His World versions. And also important to note, as I did research on this song, apparently the violin melody of this version in particular is sampled and credited in Drake's 2017 song KMT.
I mean, he plays video games. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's there. It's pitch shifted a little bit. It's not entirely noticeable as some other video game samples are, but it is there.
Speaking of sampling, but not really, my other track on the Cutting Room Floor is Town Mission 4. How you doing there, Flashman? From Mega Man 2? Bit of a weird place to bump into you.
Like pitch and everything.
Credit to Matt for finding this and pointing it out. This is like, alright. Sure, it's there. Weird place for that to show up.
My tracks on the Cutting Room Floor, one of them is Soleanna Castletown. This is composed by Mariko Nanba. It's the main hub world theme, where you're running alongside awkward human NPCs. Look, it's important in the game, and it's really different for a Sonic game. I think this is part of like the trying to make it a little more mature, bringing it into next gen and all that. This really clean acoustic guitar backing, and then you get the accordion melody coming through. It's another nice and positive theme, and you don't hear too many like it in this game.
I agree. it is very different for a Sonic game because this music belongs in a Final Fantasy game because Soliana belongs in a Final Fantasy game, not a Sonic game.
Yeah, maybe Princess Elise can kiss, I don't know, another
a human?
The other one on my cutting room floor is Radical Train, The Abandoned Mine. This is for the 6th stage, the 6th action stage. Get this pulsing beat going with the guitar going. It's a really cool jam. And then these like weird eclectic horn-like sounds come in. It may be another saxophone dying situation, but it's something similar to that. But I think it really fits when it comes to a stage called Radical Train. Something that just feels out of control. And it's in a good way. It's like the control is slightly reined in there.
I thought you were going to say out of the 90s because Radical Train is the name of a stage that belongs in the 90s.
It's radical, dude. Let's go ride the train. What will I never forget about this game? Well, I mean, I haven't played it, so I don't have the hands-on experience there. But I do think it does stand up as, yeah, terrible game, awful development story. Teach it in classes by all means, but the music process was not affected. You had a great soundtrack on this game, and honestly, way better than it deserved for the final product, but I think worth talking about nonetheless.
This is the most wild example of, because that's just sort of a trend in Sonic in general. It's game's not great, but man, that soundtrack. Sonic has had so many instances of that, but this is the most like, oh, the game barely functions. Like it's put together with tape and balsa wood by people who were not given enough time to do anything good and were just sort of jerked around. And yet, that soundtrack, though.
Yeah, probably the biggest disparity.
I love this game. I'm so happy it exists. I'm not happy that it comes from a development story that is so bad. Like, we hear stories all the time of, like, publishers, just, they don't get it. They don't understand. You can't rush games. Delay the game, or you get Sonic 06. That's how it's gonna go.
And don't ask for a new game on top of the game from the same team.
Like, how do these people work in video games and they still don't understand how video games are made? It baffles me. They've gotten slightly better since, especially recently when they finally announced after Sonic Forces was not a good game. They finally announced that, hey, you know, maybe we'll like give the Sonic development team longer than a year to make a video game. So hopefully we stop getting instances like Sonic 06 or Sonic Forces or Lost Worlds. I hear that game is all right. But like, hopefully we stop getting instances like that and they're just given the time and resources to make a game that works and is good to play.
I'll be interested to see the next 3D Sonic game. That should be interesting, especially as we approach a new console generation. But as far as talking about games that are these these cult classics, the so bad it's goods, that we were so looking forward to talking about, I think it turned out really nicely. Thank you so much for listening. That'll do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the DeVader. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. You can also find that MP3 podcast version on podcast storefronts all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, even on Spotify. But not only do we have the Spotify podcast feed, we also have a playlist of if we talk about a video game song on this show and it's on Spotify, it's going in that big Spotify playlist. Joe, what's being added?
Deadly Premonition is not on Spotify, unfortunately. God, I wish it was. But Sonic 06 is, because everything from, I think, like, Adventure onward from Sega, like everything from that period. Anything before that, no, it's not there. But yeah, everything from Adventure onward, that's on Spotify, so Sonic 06 will be added.
Good guy, Sega there. And then you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST to leave feedback for us and give us suggestions on games you'd like us to cover in the future. And then we'll also work on giving you some bonus tracks. Hopefully some more work coming on that soon. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Ashif Hakik.
I will be talking about Amon Tobin. All right, let's play us out as we mull over what that themed week could be. Very interesting. Got to talk about his world. I think it's the main theme of the game, not only Sonic's theme, but just the main theme from the game in general. And I don't know if we've talked about Nate Wants to Battle yet on this show, but let's do it with this one. Nate Wants to Battle's cover, Nate Sharp's cover of his world, is a jam. He does a great vocal cover of it, as well as the backing instrumentation. It's on YouTube. Check it out. And this is the take specifically on the Zebrahead version, because the chorus is slightly different than you might expect, but it's a jam. Thank you so much for listening to us this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.
In this world